Today is Friday, January 10th, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. The fallout from the disastrous California wildfires. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. And joining me now to get through the news of the Christ, CBN's Billy Hallowell and Trey Goins-Phillips. Gentlemen, a lot to get to. And on the focus, Trey, we've got a fantastic response from a Christian guy who got into a strange encounter online.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about this whole story is the comments in the OnlyFans models TikTok feed are all defending this guy. So she's getting a lot of attention on social media, but probably not for what she was expecting.
Right. No, not at all. So great story there. Great ending. I mean, there's a lot of problems in the story, but the response was fantastic. We'll talk about it. And coming up on the main thing, billionaire Elon Musk says British Prime Minister Starmer should resign for being, quote, complicit in the rape of Britain. There are these grooming gangs. CBN's Dale Hurd reported on this years ago, and he's got more on what's going on there on today's main thing. All right, make sure you're subscribed to all of our CBN News podcasts, DC Debrief with John Stolnis, Newsmakers with Billy, and also Jesus and the Prophecies of Christmas, a great 4-part series. All the links you can find in the description of this podcast episode, so make sure you're checking those out. All right, we're going to head to the news now in 90 seconds. Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley warned Mayor Karen Bass weeks ago that budget cuts of nearly $18 million, including $7 million from overtime, would severely hinder the fire department's ability to respond to large-scale emergencies like this week's wildfires. Cuts impacted critical programs such as pilot training, aerial firefighting readiness, disaster response teams, and bulldozer operations essential for containing wildfires. The budget reductions approved under Bass's 2024-25 fiscal plan gotten a lot of criticism as these fires are ravaging the region, killing 5 people so far. And you've seen on the images just the utter destruction of thousands of homes. Bass defended the cuts, claiming confidence in the fire department's response while also facing backlash for being overseas in Ghana when the fires erupted. Viral footage captured Bass avoiding reporters' questions upon her return, further fueling public outrage over her absence during the crisis. And President-elect Donald Trump attended the state funeral for late President Jimmy Carter at Washington National Cathedral alongside all 5 living U.S. presidents. Those are just some of today's top headlines. Check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. Real quick on the funeral there for Jimmy Carter. It was interesting to see Obama and Trump talking, and it seemed like it was a pleasant conversation for an extended period of time and sort of chatting and smiling and laughing. And it just stands in stark contrast with the rhetoric we saw during the campaign that Trump is essentially Hitler and a threat to democracy and everything else. And so then they're sort of chit-chatting like everything's cool. It's just, it makes you wonder what's going on these political machines and the rhetoric, if they really mean it. But these fires, guys, I mean, the response, I mean, there'll be time for that. Obviously, we want to first and foremost pray and help people that are in need. I mean, losing everything, I know it's in a wealthy area and yada, yada. I've seen a lot of that online. But regardless of that, I mean, you lose all your home, all your stuff. I mean, it's just and then people are getting killed. It's just a traumatic experience. And obviously one you don't want anyone to go through. But what's coming into focus now are these disastrous policies, these cuts, also not filling the reservoirs. This is something Trump warned about. The clips are going around of that as well from multiple times over the past few years, warning that they need to fill the water reservoirs up. They're not creating these fire barriers by clearing out the underbrush. All these things are going to come into more and more focus over the coming days.
Well, it's especially problematic, these things, and we're going to learn more about them, as you said, Dan, but it's problematic because we know this is an area that struggles with wildfires, right? I mean, as bad as this one is right now, it's in the top 20. It's not even the worst that the history of California has had. It's the worst, I believe, in LA. in Los Angeles. But the point is, they should be prepared. They should be ready. You know, if it's tornadoes in certain areas, wherever you are, you need to be prepared and ready for the things that commonly happen there. And so that is just wild to me that they wouldn't have been more prepared. Not having, I saw some of the figures on firefighters, purportedly same number of firefighters they had decades ago, and the population has ballooned since then. So they don't even have enough firefighters to do the job they need to do.
Well, and I think the thing is too, if you're look, I think it should be expected that there are going to be natural disasters like this or whatever the situation might be where you're caught flat-footed. There are always going to be things that you did not plan contingencies for, situations that you didn't have plans mapped out for exactly as would have been most effective. But I think what is most egregious, or one of the things that's pretty egregious in all of this, is when a politician, and Gavin Newsom is not alone in doing this. Unfortunately, this is just like what politicians do. But certainly Gavin Newsom is guilty of this, passing the buck to somebody else. It's like, well, the reason that we didn't have disaster preparedness plans in place, or the reason that X, Y, and Z didn't happen is because, well, these people weren't prepared. So I don't know, ask somebody else about it. And I think that's a pretty bad look. I don't care who you are. When you're the governor of a state, even if it's not fully on your shoulders, it's kind of on your shoulders. The buck stops with you, and you should take responsibility for it and say, look, I realize that this is a problem, and I might not have had a hand in creating the problem, but as your governor, I'm going to do what I need to do to fix it. And it doesn't seem like that's the tone that Newsom is taking.
No, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see. You know, I say things will come into focus because there is this time, right, where you want to just, right after a tragedy here, you don't want to just dive into the politics of things. But given that a lot of the issues are, I saw videos of the LA fire chief, or I don't know if it was the fire chief, but one of the LA officials talking about their emphasis on DEI, and that, you know, you have that. And then you have these environmental policies where one of the reasons they're not doing the water was, you know, something with saving fish or something like that. And it's like, at some point, these policies have to come into focus. And unfortunately, a lot of the mainstream media is left leaning, and those are like pet issues, climate change and DEI. So are they really going to have the desire to run these issues to the ground? Maybe a massive fire like this that's destroyed thousands of homes, and it looks like a scene of a carpet bombing, maybe that will get some people looking into these things and saying, hey, wait a minute, what is the deal here? Maybe this isn't working, because obviously, I mean, they weren't ready for it. And that's not the firefighters' fault, right? You hate to see them getting criticized, but I don't know how you criticize somebody out there risking their life in a fire, and then they got no water. You're not even giving them water to fight it. I mean, it's just obnoxious and tragic all around, the whole thing. But then the fact that they don't have the resources to fight it. So hopefully we get answers, and we will certainly keep on that to the best of our ability here at CBN News in the coming days and weeks if the mainstream media neglects to follow up on that. But all right, we are going to head over to the focus story now, and there's this viral exchange going online. It's going viral online, but it happened at a Five Guys. Tell me about this exchange, Trey, between this OnlyFans model and this Five Guys employee.
Yeah, so this was a stunt that an explicit content creator on OnlyFans, who goes by the stage name Bonnie Blue, that she posted on her TikTok account. And of course, the internet is the internet. So can we prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the guy on the other side of the cash register at Five Guys didn't know everything that was going on? No, but we can just take him at his word and what he said. And if we're taking each person at their words, this is what happened. So Bonnie Blue, 24-year-old OnlyFans model, she goes up to Five Guys cashier and essentially propositions him for sex. She makes a lot of lewd comments about the name of the franchise being Five Guys, and she was wanting to have sex with one of the guys, and this was the cashier that happened to be at the register at the time that she went up. So like I said, she propositioned him for sex, and he was kind of confused by the interaction because she was being, a little bit tongue in cheek. She wasn't being straight out with what she was asking. She was kind of trying to be playful about it, but it ended up being pretty awkward. So anyway, confused, he just says, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I didn't know if there's a special room or a place that we would go. I want to make sure that I give you a good rating. Again, just making more inappropriate comments about engaging in some sort of sexual activity with this young cashier. And then at that point, once the Five Guys employees caught on to what she's asking and what she's alluding to, he says, no, I don't think that's happening. I'm a Christian man and I'm waiting until marriage. Genuinely, I feel like I'm dreaming right now, still kind of expressing confusion at this entire exchange. And then at that point, trying to kind of move the woman along, to move Bonnie Blue along and get her to just order her food or leave. He tries handing her a menu, and he is greeted by her again turning the conversation back towards sexuality. And then at that point, he kind of firmly declined again. No, I'm not having sex with you. And that was the point where the conversation kind of ended. And she just said, that's a shame. And then they exchanged a little bit more, and then she walked away. And then this clip ended up on social media, and it's gone viral in the days since.
All right. So who is this person that pulled off this stunt? What is she? What's her deal?
Yeah, so like I said, her stage name is Bonnie Blue. She is known for kind of posting these kind of salacious and ridiculous exchanges on her social media, on her TikTok especially. She has an OnlyFans account where presumably I've never been on the site, but presumably she's posting obviously inappropriate sexual content there with different partners, and then she on her regular social media accounts, X and TikTok and Instagram, she posts little clips and conversational videos with stuff like this, really just social media stunts trying to drive people to her and to make headlines about the content she's creating. So she's no stranger to this. She is kind of just a rabble rouser and is always out there trying to garner attention. But if this was not all staged and this was authentically an exchange that happened between this Five Guys employee and this OnlyFans model, I can assume, Dan, that this was not the kind of attention she was expecting to get.
No, I mean, because let's talk about the response here. It's got, like we said, it's gone viral, but not for the reasons she probably expected. Tell me about what we're seeing people say.
Yeah, so her TikTok account has been flooded with comments responding to the clip, but they're rather than presumably most of the comments on her account are often praising her because that's people who are going to her account because they want her content. But because this clip itself has gone so viral, a lot of people are going over to her TikTok account to watch the video, and they're commenting on her account, defending the young man at Five Guys. So one person wrote, "Well done, young man," calling his reaction to her classy. Another said, "What a legendary response from a young lad." And then someone else added, you could have gotten someone fired if they played along with this, the stunt there. He went on to write, "The guy is just working hard for his future." And then another person kind of pointed out the obvious by saying, "This is actually so weird," talking about just the exchange at all and the fact that Bonnie Blue even went up to make a comment like this to a young guy. And by the way, the employee himself, he posted on his own social media about it. He said, "I was not expecting to be propositioned, of course, by this porn star while I was working my shift." And he said, "It turned out not to be a huge issue. I just played it off." But he said, had it been somebody else, it could have been a pretty awkward and even problematic encounter. And he said that she didn't even check ahead of time to get my consent. Am I okay being on a video that's going to go up on social media and be viewed at this point more than 11 million times? And also, more importantly, he said that she never even verified his age, that he was of legal age to be engaging in a conversation about this.
I mean, first of all, kudos to the young guy because fantastic response. He had no idea he was being filmed. An attractive woman comes up to him and says all this stuff. I mean, it's temptation right in your face. And he was stuck to his integrity, stuck to his character, and praise God for that response there. That was a fantastic response. pray for that young man because that's awesome. I mean, sounds like he'll make a great husband someday. But I mean, just you put the. I was thinking about this when I watched it. You put the shoe on the other foot. If a guy does this to a girl, I mean, is this not the textbook definition of sexual harassment right here? I mean, she's propositioning this guy for sexual activities. He says no, and she just keeps going and keeps doing it. I mean, it's just utterly despicable, this whole thing. And the fact that anyone could try to think this is a hilarious prank is just, it's beyond me, but I'm glad he had the response he did. And that's the reason it's going viral.
Yeah. Well, I think staged or not, this kind of interaction, like you said, Dan, if it happened the other way around, would 100% be like predatory behavior that would be condemned immediately. If this was something in a movie or it's something that actually happened, like in this clip, we imagine it was legitimate. So yeah, regardless, it doesn't matter. Staged, not staged, authentic, inauthentic. If this was the other way around, 110%, it would have been, immediately dismissed as a disgusting overture by a male going up to a female employee at a restaurant.
I don't have a lot to add to this because obviously, I don't know. I'm so skeptical of everything. I'm like, is it staged? Is it not? But yeah, I do think the broader issue of, I feel like there's a bigger acceptance of women doing these things lately than there would ever be of men. And nobody should be, if it's true and it's real, nobody should be put in a position like that. So yeah, that's what I have to add to it. I think it's an interesting story for sure.
And look, the death of shame is pretty evident in a clip like this, where a human being, regardless of their gender, thinks that this is good in some way, shape, or form, and this is going to be a great clip to basically, sell myself out to just some random person and think it's hilarious and fun and yada yada yada. It's a sign of the times. But again, that's to me, that's why the clip's encouraging, because the young guy, I mean, just that's his response. Like, that's his first response to that, and that's a great response.
Yeah, for sure. And I hope that anybody who sees the clip, it'll open a door for conversation, right? Because regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of faith and cultural perspective and whatever station in life you're at when you're seeing a clip like this, if you're not a believer, hopefully it'll prompt some questions and maybe open the door for some good conversation about, well, why would somebody want to wait until marriage to engage in sexual activity with a partner? What does that look like? How do you approach this from a biblical perspective? So if nothing else, our prayer, I think, at CBN should be, I hope God uses this to open the door to having some significant faith conversations for people.
All right, well, we're going to head over to the main thing now. And appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today, Trey. But on the main thing today, billionaire Elon Musk is criticizing British Prime Minister Starmer, saying that he should resign because there are these grooming gangs allegedly running rampant and have been for some time in the UK. And so they want a prosecutor to launch a full inquiry into this whole situation. And CBN's Dale Hurd has been reporting on this over the years. And I'm actually going to be talking to him later today on the CBN News YouTube channel about his reporting and about this. But here is his report on this disturbing situation in the UK. That's today's main thing.
Musk says Prime Minister Starmer should resign for being, quote, complicit in the rape of Britain, for failing to sufficiently investigate the grooming gangs as prosecutor or to launch a full inquiry as Prime Minister. Starmer has accused Musk of lies and misinformation. CBN News was among the first news organizations in the United States to expose Britain's grooming gang scandal. Here is our story from 2016, and we need to advise that this report contains disturbing content and should not be viewed by children. Some scandals are so massive that they're simply hard to believe, but this one is true. As many as 1 million white English children may have been the victims of Muslim rape gangs, better known as grooming gangs, in towns up and down Great Britain. Policy analyst George Igler.
I mean, when you counter an issue that is just so unbelievable, just so outside your frame of reference and understanding, the immediate human reaction is just not want to believe it at all.
Perhaps even harder to believe is that while there have been prosecutions, British authorities have still not stopped this criminal activity. There's a particular problem involving Pakistani heritage men who target young, vulnerable white English girls. Not my words, but a member of Parliament, Jack Straw, who also said these Pakistani heritage men view white English girls as, quote, easy meat. This is when some shout racism, but here are the facts. Calculations based on convictions show that a British Muslim male is 170 times more likely to be part of a sex grooming gang than a non-Muslim. And there are no recorded instances of non-Muslims doing this to Muslim girls as part of a criminal enterprise. In one local jurisdiction, it was estimated that 6 out of 7 Muslim males either knew about or were part of a grooming gang.
What you do not have is any example of non-Muslim men targeting Muslim girls for this organized form of abuse. So the argument that this crime exists everywhere is not only false, but is being deliberately cultivated by the media and by the government inquiry that is kicking the can down the road.
The grooming gangs have been traced back as far as the late 1980s. At-risk white English girls, often from broken homes and some as young as 9 years old, were wooed or groomed by teenage Muslim boys called Romeos, and even by groups of Muslim men who hung around school gates. The plan was to make the girl feel important. She was given gifts and drugs, but she was being groomed to be a drug-addicted prostitute. Then came the gang rapes. The girls were threatened with death if they tried to flee. The definitive book on this scandal is Easy Meat by Peter McLaughlin, who declined an on-camera interview for safety reasons. He told us journalists would not speak about it because the perpetrators were mostly dark-skinned and Muslim. Childcare professionals used political correctness as an omerta, a code of silence concerning what the public was allowed to know.
These girls are the victims of a multicultural revolution, and it's certainly an indication of the fact that this accusation of racism is potentially the most powerful political weapon known to man.
The cover-up was eventually exposed, yet the grooming gangs continue to operate. One victim told a British newspaper, "Nothing has changed, not in the slightest. It's still the same scale as before." Prime Minister Starmer claims that when he led the Crown Prosecution Service, it had the highest number of child sex abuse prosecutions on record. However, the grooming gangs were never effectively stopped, and the abuse continues to this day. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Man, that is just disturbing stuff. And if it's being suppressed in the name of PC, that is something that needs to stop immediately. Need to be praying for the people over there. And as I said, I'll be talking to Dale later today on the CBN News YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. All right, we have time on the podcast today for one last thing. We're going to look at John 8:32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
A good Bible verse to remember, especially in light of the story today that we read for the focus, right, is that there's freedom in pursuing life the way that God calls us to do, pursuing life the way capital T truth calls us to live it. There's a lot of freedom in that.
Absolutely. Amen. Great spot to leave it on this week of the Quick Start podcast. As always, make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. Lord willing, and that creek don't rise up on us. We'll be back here on Monday with more. God bless. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you then.